joint work session meeting April 19th, 2022 to order. If you would, please, we have a flag in here.
Right over here.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, thank you, everyone, and you have a seat at this table, man. Well, first introduction. Thank you, everyone. We've got a bit more of an extended house than we did the last few times that we've done this. I want to make sure and welcome the school board and the library board.
Real quick, when you're using the microphone, you need to pull it close.
Roger that. Thanks, Jared. Just really want to reiterate and highlight the library board and the school board to this. I think so far this has been a great success between the town and the township. And I know I'm not alone in this, but I don't believe we should have limited it and keep limiting it to just ourselves. You guys are a major part of this community, so welcome. I also wanted to take the time to reiterate at least what I understand our mission to be, just finding synergies, finding places where we can better work together, find efficiencies where we can ultimately provide a better community to our residents. So that being said, you all are now at this table you guys have a voice, you guys are here, don't hesitate to speak up. Don't hesitate to tell us what you think that we can, if there's something that we can do better, you guys are going to be a part of that now. So this is not my meeting, this is our meeting. So I'm going to pause a moment, look at Shane, if there's anything you want to add.
No, good.
Okay. All right, that being said, I felt like that was just the first agenda item. Welcome. Thank you. We'll move on. The next item on the agenda was a subcommittee reports. Let the school board and library know, I believe you guys understand, we've created some subcommittees in some of our last joint work sessions. Just want to highlight those and talk about what took place since our last one. So I'll turn it over to you. Let you do some talking here for the leadership subcommittee.
Okay. We good?
So leadership subcommittee is met. We've talked a few times. Most recently talked about a couple things. One, which will be really kind of agenda item 3 and 4 when we talk about kind of where this moves forward. But then 2, what are some other commonalities when it comes to, we talked about maintenance on vehicles and that kind of thing. So I think I think you had an update on that, correct?
Yeah. If you want, Ryan, when it comes around, I'll turn it over to you. Yeah.
So those were the big things.
Okay, well, if not, Ryan, I'll turn it over to you for the discussion. So this wasn't really a subcommittee, but I feel like it's important to discuss in it. The idea was presented that both the town and the township have a large number of vehicles. The township has an in-house mechanic. The town thought, hey, why not, instead of contracting out, essentially going to a third-party vendor, why don't we utilize some of the taxpayer dollars already being spent on this and see if we could find some room to work together. So that being said, Ryan and Don and I believe Chief Smith and Chief Stoops all met. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Sure. Don, you want to have that? Yeah, I think it was pretty straightforward. We did have a meeting and kind of talked about it. I think the one thing that maybe surprised, at least it surprised me, I don't know if it surprised everybody else in the room, was that the town's fleet's actually really substantial, about 60% larger than the township's fleet. So I think the one thing we quickly realized was the town taking all of our equipment to the township would potentially put some pressure on it in terms of their ability to do what they were doing with their equipment. Logistics-wise, I think as well as we kind of talked through it, because the township is purchasing some of their stuff in bulk, it may not be as much of a cost savings to the town. We would have to go out. The township would like us to provide our own resources, so basically we'd have to drop off a vehicle, have to have its filters with it, and it would have to have the oil it needed with it, and then we would drop it off, and the township would basically complete the service for us and give it back. So in some ways it would create some efficiencies, in other ways it would kind of be inefficient and not necessarily as helpful to the town. Although we're not sure it's going to work, I think we kind of came to the decision that we would demo a couple of vehicles and just see how it works. And so I think the town's going to bring over a couple vehicles, at least probably two, and the police department may demo a couple as well. I won't speak for Chief Stoops, but I think they have a pretty good deal with their current provider, Whitlow's, who's doing those oil changes for their fleet. And the police fleet's fairly sizable. They've got over 50 vehicles in their fleet, so and they have a pretty good deal that they're getting with Whitlow's, and even cost-wise, and we talked about that with the township, even just materials, we're not sure that we would get as good of a deal as they're already getting there. So the police fleet may not come into the equation, but again, we may just demo it a little bit and see how that works out. And so that's kind of our next step, is just try it out, see how it works for the township, and see how it works for the town, and see if it has any cost savings, and then we'll figure out where to go from there.
Thanks, Ryan. Don or Chief Smith, you guys, anything to add to that? Okay, Roger, appreciate that. I have been given a heads up. Please speak into the microphone. I'm guilty of this too right now. I want to make sure I address each of you, and I'm trying to turn my head and face you, but we need to speak directly into the microphone to make sure that they're picked up. So I got you, Jared. I got you. Do I need to put it in my mouth? Now you can hear me. I'll move on. We got the leadership subcommittee, youth sports. Forgive me, they did not meet. That's correct. Unfortunately, they were unable to meet. We'll remedy that one before the next one. Yes, sir. Oh, my apologies.
Independent of each other, but kind of a recap. We've met a couple times with Dr. Wyndham and both. And the property that's come into focus is the land at school, which is north of Sycamore. And in those conversations, it was kind of like we'd like to be able to either replace that land with some other property. So what Ryan and I did is we went and talked to a landowner on the northwest quadrant of the town. And we had a conversation with him and going down the spot if there's any fill-in post-conversation, certainly share it with us. But the landowner seemed amenable to the idea of maybe identifying some property that we could use for a future school. And then I believe with our annexation efforts, the school, I think, made a bid on some land. That is, no? Okay, I thought, how's that? Is that better? Does red mean stop? Green mean go? Okay. I'm colorblind. So, okay, so there's no update from that standpoint?
We've been looking at a parcel of land and have had some conversations about that, but we haven't put any offers.
And I think that land was the land that was just east of the old Hendricks County Golf Course that is being built on by Danville. And so I think we have two opportunities here, or certainly identified two potential parcels. But I know that the one that Ryan and I spoke to, we probably need to circle back and see if there's an interest to do that. I know Amanda can't be here tonight, but she did tell me that she's been trying to schedule a meeting with John McDavid. John McDavid is on the AJAA board, and they've been unsuccessful. She did meet with Dina and Nicole, and so they've had conversations. I know Amanda, myself, and Aaron TV-Ball, who's also a member on this committee, have met. But I think that's the movement that we have going, and my sense is until we're told no, we have two viable opportunities here that
we'd probably like to get onto sooner than later. So that's my update. Ryan, I don't know if you have any further. That's all I have, Robert.
Thanks, Greg. If I may pause a moment, just make sure and bring the school board and library board up to, sorry, Jared, up to speed on this. So we had 4 subcommittees. Leadership subcommittee we already mentioned was just a sort of a guiding factor to not only this meeting but the efforts we're trying to make here. The youth sports facility subcommittee that Greg just spoke to. The intent there was we identified a weakness in our original joint work session that the community is missing an area for kids to play sports, softball, baseball, soccer, etc. Not just directly inside the school system. So the AJA fields are not fantastic. So we looked to where can we improve on, where can we move them, etc. So this subcommittee, that was the goal of that. The next one.
Can I also follow through? I guess I didn't do a very good job. You know, this land that is north of Sycamore, you know, we're not trying to compete with Grand Park or whatever they've got up in Noblesville and Kokomo. We're trying to create facilities for our kids that don't want to play travel, can't afford to play travel, aren't good enough to play travel. Also to create a facility that we might be able to have 100, 125, 150 people to have events there, wedding receptions, birthday parties, things for our community. And then at the end of the day, maybe move our farmers market there or any 4th of July festivities. You know, we've got Rib Fest through the chamber, and that continues to grow. And we moved that out to the fairgrounds because we don't have the space here. So that's really the intent here, and the focus is to try to provide space, facilities for our community. I mean, we've got, if it would work out there, you've got parking, excess parking that would be at community or elementary, middle school north, Sycamore Elementary, Kingsway. So it just seems to make sense that that might be a very viable location. So that's really why, that's where my focus came from initially. Thank you, Robert.
Thanks, Greg. So the next one, transportation subcommittee. This one was created again an original problem we identified, or a problem that we identified in that original joint work session. The goal here was to identify a lack of transportation options for the jobs that are available in and around the community. We know that there's availability of link, but that's very challenging and not exactly a workforce transportation option. And then I'm sure you all are aware that Plainfield has a public transportation option that they've been able to set up. This was a subcommittee to either mimic or extend off of the Plainfield line and again, trying to find efficiencies that we can work together with other government entities. So the goal being workforce, transportation, et cetera, in and around the community. I do believe I'm correct, that one did not meet. Got it. Okay, so move on to the last one, and I think the one that's probably going to have the most action to it, the annexation subcommittee. This one was all 4 of us, the boards here, are involved in this. I think you guys are already aware, library and school board, I think you guys are already aware of this. I'm going to turn it over to Don, Ann, Greg, which one of you want to speak on this?
Well, I'll start. I came on after the first phase. The first phase was Liberty Meadows. And we have been out in Liberty Meadows trying to, I guess the goal is to get 11 petitions signed. We're at 8, 7 in hand, 1's coming. Ann and I have both been out there together twice. My sense is there might be another one out there that we can get, possibly. But that number, I think, comes about because it makes us contiguous, which is part of the legal ramifications that we have to abide by. So And then we have phase 2. I'll defer to Mr. Cannon for phase 2. How's that?
I think we have one petition so far in phase 2, so you'll need to circle back on that one.
Well, in phase 2, if I remember correctly, is west of the Easton Gray project. It does not include Hendricks Regional or Hendricks Power, but it's to the west of them, which is the self-storage units, it's the Legion, it's the piece of land we talked about earlier. Then there are some properties that then go north of that. So those are the areas. And the rationale and the reasoning behind this is it may be easier to do annexation than there is to do consolidation. And so we're doing it, we're taking on the task of annexation by getting the library, the school, the township, and the town to sign the letters that are going out to these landowners. And so that was phase 2. Phase 3, who was phase 3?
Phase 3 is just north of that area, so it's south of 100 North, but west of County Road 500 East. So it's just a little further north of that other area.
And I think at the end of the day, what we're trying to do to work in conjunction with the school corporation is build, for lack of a better word, build a wall. I don't like that, but that's what we're trying to secure our boundaries. So Plainfield doesn't build into Washington Township, which they already have. So Danville doesn't do the same thing. Send those kids, our schools, if they create a TIF district, to keep all the money, which Plainfield has done. We've got that also up at the northern part of Washington Township with Brownsburg. So that's the rationale that we're trying to use. We've had freeholder meetings. It's, I think it's safe to say it's all over the board. Somebody comes in and it's hearsay. Well, I heard this, or we probably didn't, not probably, we didn't do a very good job of communication. I'll give you the example. We sent letters out to several, 30, 50 freeholders maybe at one, the very last one. After the fact, we determined there was too many, so we tried to send letters out to some of those that had already received one to let them know they were not going to be part of this annexation. Well, not everybody got one, maybe the first time or the second time or both times. So they talked to their neighbors. And now you're getting hearsay from them and hearsay from this. And this is what the town's trying to do. It's a land grab. And so it's just confusing. And so we have to do a better job of communication in our discussions with these different landowners. But as they walk away, there's ones that say, you know what, I am interested, let me think about it. We've got to do a better job of our follow-up. You know, right now the follow-up is someone's got to go knock on their door. Well, if they're home, they're home. If they're not, they're not. If they're eating dinner, they're eating dinner. If they're available, that's great. But then, you know, it's catching them at the right time. And so that's kind of been what we're up against. One did make the comment, and I applaud him for it. He says, well, you know, we've told them that Danville in their comprehensive plan is going to be coming into Washington Township. I mean, it says right in their plan, we got a copy of it. And his point was, well, if they want us to be annexed into Danville, then they're going to have to come and knock on our door, and they're going to have to do the same thing you're doing, right? And I said, yep. And we can say yes or we can say no, right? And I said, yes. He says, okay. Then there's no reason for me to sign. I'll just wait for them to show up. So it's really frustrating when you see somebody that's got Avon soccer, Avon cross country, Avon marching band in their front yard, and they're really part of our community, but they just won't be annexed into it for whatever reasons. And it's very frustrating when you see that. So we're not going to give up, but that's kind of what we've been up against lately. Don, I don't know if you want to say anything or Ann's been at those freeholder meetings as well.
No, I think you've summarized it fairly well. The other three taxing entities, the township and the school and the library, have joined in on this because, as he said, is to preserve our tax revenue. I mean, from the township side, I've explained that with, the fire department, if we service that area, if it's in our territory, we get the tax dollars. But if Danville comes over, then their fire department, technically services that area, even though our station's probably closer, so therefore, through mutual aid, we're doing that, but we're not getting the tax revenue. So that's one of the reasons why we're also trying to, lack of a better word, build the wall. The school and library are also trying to protect their revenue because of the way Plainfield's done before. So I think that's the big thing. I think for the most part, other than this last one, I think we've had pretty good response. I mean, people have been open to it, want to talk about it. I think you're right. We need to, do some more follow-up. But, this last one was, a little disappointing, but it is what it is. And, we concentrate on one of the ones we still have out there and then kind of regroup and go back at it again. So, do you have anything to add in?
I'm gonna ask a question of you,
Yeah.
Don. Just I know the answer. I'm just asking. So you're saying this last one, we're referring to this number 3 that Greg was mentioning, 60
Yeah.
minus 15, that kind of thing. Okay, thanks.
Don, I would amend that we meet again and we look to see how we can get contiguous with what we do have, so we can kind of hone in on the few property owners that would put us at the 51% plus meet all the legal requirements of the contiguous. So that would be my recommendation. I feel like they went well. I think looking back, maybe we bit off too much on each of these. I could see that maybe being an issue, and we would, if we did it again, we would be a little bit more systematic. But nonetheless, I feel like Ryan opened up the meetings very well, and we educated them. And I feel like they came away, they were a little edgy. They were yelling at us, and that's okay. But they went away educated, and it brought down the tone we were all very articulate. We all explained it. We all shared with them. We want them to maintain their agricultural rights and everything that goes with it. We just need that protection. And I felt like the tone came down and the meeting went better. But I think we just need to regroup and really look at, almost play Tetris, if you will, and figure out the right path so that we can just get a small, thin line.
And I also think it's important for those of us here at the table understand this, but to speak for the population of the Avon Community Schools, currently there's about 10% of our student body that live, or basically are Plainfield residents.
Correct.
And Plainfield has just announced that they're building 900 more homes, and those homes are not 55 and plus. They're going to be single-family residents, and potentially we could have another 10% students coming into our community schools. So 20% of our students that we're not collecting tax revenue for. I think it's important for that to be said, as to point out why we are trying to secure our township borders.
And that is correct. And they also have the same impact on Plainfield schools. Plainfield schools suffers from this as well, but they make them whole. They pass through $100 million, which is a very in the weeds process, but nonetheless, they pass through $100 million in assessed value, and they also support them in their payments for their transportation department. So Plainfield schools do suffer like we do, but they make them whole. They just don't do that for us. And why, I don't know. It's mystifying to me, but that's just the reality. And we just live with it, and we work with it, and we figure out how to get around it. And I feel like it's strengthened us as a school corporation, But nonetheless, we do not want to participate and have the same situation with Danville. So that's why we have offered to help out and go door knock when it's cold.
Can I clarify one thing?
Yes.
Just to clarify, so we do collect tax revenue for them in terms of the funding into our education fund, because that's based on student count. So that we do receive money to have teachers for them and assistants for them, and we do receive property tax revenue from that development because it is within the boundaries of Washington Township. But to your point, Mrs. Loudon, where we don't collect revenue is when it's in a TIF and a tax increment finance. And this development that you're referencing, part of that is apartments in a TIF, and they have talked with us about potentially passing through some of that assessed value, which was progress. But I just wanted to clarify that in some ways we do receive the property tax revenue from that, but in other ways we don't. So it's very confusing.
That's what, yeah, that pass-through is very confusing, very in the weeds.
Can I ask a question based on that, Scott? I think all of us in this room need to be educated on how this all functions, because we may misspeak along the way, or we're confused. Is there somebody that can come in here and kind of give us an illustration that if this piece of property that's in Washington Township that goes to Avon schools is in Avon, this is how much the school gets? And then if it's in Washington Township, but it's in the town of Plainfield, and those kids still go to Avon, and it's in the TIF, it's easy, nothing. Or a pass-through is whatever. But what do you get if it's Plainfield, not in the TIF, but in Washington Township? My sense is you don't get 100% of what you would have got if you were in Avon. But I think we all need to understand what percentage. You go from 100 to 50 or 100 to 60. I don't know. I think that would help everybody.
We could certainly do that, or have someone come in and do that as well. The biggest impact is TIF. So there may be some difference between property tax revenue because of tax caps, and tax caps impact Plainfield differently than they impact Avon. But in general, the biggest impact where we start to get the most concern is when there is residential development in a TIF.
The tax base in Plainfield is 60% commercial, 40% residential. Ours is 80 some residential and the rest commercial. So that references on the tax cap impact. But yeah, I think that's a good idea. And I think we mentioned a name down here, but we can maybe line it up. And I think that person would be very good. Yeah.
Ryan, I'm gonna put an action item on for help set that up. I think it'd be a great opportunity. At least I can speak for the town council. I think it sounds like that'd be a great opportunity for township, school board, and library board as well. But I'd say at least for us, Ryan, make sure we get on that. Thank you.
Well, and I don't think it's just for us. I think it's for public awareness as well. Because we're talking about all this, and it is kind of challenging to make sense of all the nuances that you all are well versed in, and everybody else is kind of mediocre to less, maybe in that. So I think educating folks on why it's important, why we're focused on it, it's not just a thing to do. So it's important.
Any further discussion about the annexation committee? If not, we'll move on. Jeff? Nothing? All right, move on. Next item on the agenda is our governance protocols moving forward. So for this meeting, we had some scheduling conflicts, we had some last-minute changes, agenda, etc. And truth be told, we didn't have a plan on how we make a ruling. Like who gets to decide what? This is not a town council meeting. This is not a Washington Township board meeting. This is our meeting. So how do we decide who makes these calls? So I know of at least 4 items, and I'm sure there might be more, but there are 4 sort of areas that I think it's probably best that we come up with some rules and game plan for any future conflicts, et cetera, going down the road. And the fact that you all 4 now are here, I think it's very prudent that we get these in place and that you guys are a part of that conversation. So those 4 items, again, there might be more, but off the top of my head, these are scheduling for this meeting, the agenda for this meeting, the location of this meeting, and then who or what entity is the presiding member. So who has that final call? Who's doing what I'm doing right now? I think Shane and I discussed, and I think we have a great suggestion, but right now I think it's just that. It's just a suggestion. That would be the 4 presidents or chairs of those boards being the last entity to make any schedule, all the 4 things that I just mentioned. I don't think we're set in stone on that. Again, this is up for discussion. This is up for debate, if you will. I'll shut up now and open it to the floor. Hear any thoughts from anyone? Grab a mic, make sure it's green.
Well, I agree, Robert. I mean, for the town, it would be the town council president and the town manager. I would guess that if it would be the township trustee and the chair, the president of the township board for the school would be the school superintendent, and then the president of the school board, and then the library would be Laurel and the president, Mr. Pearl. That's how I look at it, and to me, those are the individuals, not the bodies in those seats together determine, are we in, are we out, are we on, are we off? Nobody else within that is a member or part of those groups, in my opinion, should be making those decisions.
If I can add one suggestion, the collaboration group, which are basically the CEOs of each of those 4 taxing areas, we rotate every other month, yeah. And so we take turns running, being called the facilitator. Scott's been kind enough to host the meetings at his office, his building, but we rotate around. Like this last meeting was Laurel Fessler, the librarian, who gathered the agenda, and each of us, submitted our agenda items, and she put together the agenda, and she ran the meeting. The next meeting will be myself, the township, in 2 months, and we do that, and we actually even set up schedule meetings for the year, but that's the way that group works. I mean, it's worked quite well. So, I'm just bringing up as maybe a suggestion to rotate the meetings and rotate the chair or the facilitator or whatever you want to call for these meetings. And just a suggestion.
Yeah, I think my only cause for concern of rotating is purely on location. You guys have a wonderful professional development space here. This genuinely, this is very nice. The space makes it a little easier to host 4 entities. We were discussing this before the meeting. There really isn't that much space anywhere else and around the community that we could probably do something like that. So if we do rotate, I think that's a great idea, Don. I'm not sure we're going to be able to really find a better place that we could rotate location out.
We're talking about location.
Sure.
I'm talking about
Presiding member, yep.
So like this, you're doing this meeting, maybe the next one Shane does, the next one after that Tony does, and the next one after that would be Steve Pearl, right?
Well, since we are planning on meeting and have kind of previously discussed meeting quarterly, and there are 4 taxing entities, I think it makes sense that we rotate through. That way everyone gets an opportunity to facilitate once a year. I mean, that kind of does seem logical.
I mean, this is not a voting meeting. There's no, nothing to that effect. But if I can get some input on, if you guys agree with that, I think that makes sense. I mean, it just seems to line up perfectly. I'm getting some nods out of here. Thank you, Cindy.
And Mr. Pope, we're glad to host him here.
I heard it. We've got rent-free. We're good. Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Scott. So it sounds like scheduling agenda, at least location might be locked in, but presiding member will rotate it out. I would suggest the leadership subcommittee meet shortly after this and decide who's next, come up with a schedule, on who's that presiding member, et cetera. I don't think we need to have that out here at the moment. So if there aren't any other concerns or questions about this, we'll move on. I'm trying to get us out of here, making it quick.
About agenda.
Agenda, same thing. That, yep.
Everyone said
The,
agenda item?
I believe all 4 presidents of those boards are the last call on those agenda. I think those are who has input, has takeaway, et cetera. And whoever's rotating doesn't have any superpowers over that. I don't think that's the intent. The four members. And Ms. Trilby, yes,
I
ma'am.
just want to make sure we've got a library board meeting here coming up in about a week, and we'll discuss, I know Steve hasn't been to any of these meetings, but OC, Laurel wasn't able to make it tonight, but we'll just make sure
Sure.
we're represented.
I was about to say, I think I'd suggest the president of that board, but at the same time, representation from your board is I think what we're looking at. I think the initial response should be the president, but if he or she can't make it, whoever, vice president or some sort of appointee. So I think you're being put on the hook.
Well, and I think if an agenda item needs any kind of clarification, that's the job of whoever's maybe presiding at that time would send that back to the organization that put that on there and said, okay, what exactly are we talking about? Is that something that, obviously from a township board, we're a board of 3, so if 2 or more are gathered, we're in a problem. So we have to, and that may be something that goes to that board meeting in advance to say, hey, this is something coming up to prepare them, and we need to have that conversation in a board setting, if you will. So just a way to not get around that, but address that so we
Sure.
can discuss it. So there's no surprises, and actually get something done accomplished as well.
Any challenges, any complaints about that? All right, moving on. Last item here is a communication plan. So this was really sort of in follow-up to, it's a bit in line with the governance. We each 4 of these entities now have a standalone communications director, or at least the town calls it communication director, I believe. Yeah, I was about to say, I think the township calls it community engagement. Kevin, I'm not sure what your specific title is, but communications director. It's essentially the same role, and I know the library board now has one as well. I think the intent for this was let's come up with some rules, some sort of agreements between us to make sure, sort of a double-edged sword, both sides of this. One, make sure we're not stepping on each other's toes. Make sure Jared does an amazing job, and I want to make sure he doesn't say the wrong thing or do something that offends our school board or what have you. But on the other side of that, and I think Mr. Carr from the school for this one is maybe there's areas that we can team together on a particular topic. So I know that Jared and Karen from the township have been doing this, but we have 2 other entities here that have 2 additional communications directors. I think this is a valuable opportunity to have one strong community be speaking with 4, but yet one strong voice. So I'm going to shut up now and open it up to the table on what kind of rules or opportunities we might want to sort of define here. Nothing? Crickets? I'm going to answer you a little sillily. Yes. I feel like it's all of the above. And if forgive me, I'm going to say a troublesome word here. The topic of consolidation. So that word alone can create some problems. I don't want the council to direct Jared to speak about this topic, and the library board, the township, the school board's like, yeah, no, we're just not talking about that issue. So I want this to also be an avenue where the 4 of us are in line with, or at least pretty close to in line with what we're using our voice. But I think it's all of the above. I think it's yes, what this meeting, what we're talking about, agenda, noticing it, or publicizing it, excuse me. I think it's feedback. We do 5-minute recaps, things like that. Make sure we're in those 5-minute recaps, we're not saying something that's stepping on your toes or the township's toes, et cetera, but also mimicking or working together on those 5-minute recaps. So I feel like it's all the above, but it's not my meeting. Come on, Shane, and get in here, buddy.
Well, no, you answered it. I was going to say yes as well. So if it's everything from when it's timed out that it's posted, and you guys are the experts in this, so I'm going to say words like post and inappropriate marketing type things or communication type stuff. But when is it posted? How is it posted? I think the reason why we say this is the goal is to get us into more in-depth conversations that may bring certain levels of disagreement or agreement or emotion and that kind of thing. So I think it's important to keep a integrity to the process and the playing field, if you will, for lack of a better analogy, that we all know this is what's communicated, this is how we're going to communicate it. It's not bent one direction or another based on certain people's feelings. And I think that's only fair. Because we are going to hopefully get into discussions about stuff when we bring stuff here, that how we work through this. If we don't have tough discussions, then it's kind of like we're just going through the motions. So, and I'm probably talking way too much right now, but that's what we talked about. I'll be honest with you, I called them rules of engagement, and Robert didn't like that, but that's as simple. That's my simplest brain.
But I was trying to keep that one quiet.
I know.
I feel like it's apt. It's an apt description. Just to make sure we're not. We need to be working together, not stepping on each other's toes.
I mean, is it a point that you'd like to say, like a cohesive message? I mean, I know that the township and the town have been working for a cohesive message, one strong community, right? And I don't know if there's, to include the school and the library, if there can be a message. I mean, I'm not talking, and with that message, it's almost like a mission, with that in mind when you're doing social posts, that you're sticking or seeing that vision or that mission to make sure that is within the guidelines of that. And I think it would make sense that not only the township and the town, but the school and the library, as, percentage-wise, we're not near as big as you guys, but it would still be nice, they would give us that collective feeling,
Well, and everybody touches a different demographic, too, so it gives a wider message of that one community concept to folks that may not, no offense, Karen, but may not pay attention to our posts and that kind of thing. I'm sure everybody does, or the towns, and they may, wow, I really want to keep up with what's going on at the library. So it's a good way to do that.
I really, you're absolutely right. I feel like that's the vision, that cohesiveness to make sure we're all. How do you? When I'm not a singer, but when you sing in a chorus, not everybody's singing the exact same note, but they're all singing, or they're all carrying the same tune. So that's. You want to help me with that one? No, I think you're absolutely right. The cohesiveness, and I think that's the intent. I think that's the goal.
Well, I look at this as an expansion of the collaboration meetings that we have every other month or every quarter. It's the same players, but we've expanded the group to all the school board members, all the library board members, all the town council members, the township board members. I look at the invitations there. It's up to everybody if they want to accept the invitation, but I don't see that we really will talk about anything any differently than what we've already done at the collaboration meetings. So, but I think the key is that we all have a different job to do. School's different than the town. The township's different than the schools in the town. But I think if we can keep everybody informed of what's out there, what's happening, versus being blindsided or having a meeting where one entity is hoping they go down this path, but somebody else has to approve it and they're going down another path, just keep from creating surprises. And I think the key is to work it out before it goes to those meetings than after they go to those meetings. So this is, to me, like I said, is just an expansion of that collaboration.
Yeah, so that's fair. That's absolutely fair. But I don't think the intent here was to take away each entity's control over their communication. So you wouldn't have additional bosses. What I feel like this would be is we would be limiting or making sure we are corralling the scope with which you're communicating. So your bosses would still remain the same. And I'm sort of using this to speak to you, Kevin, same thing to you, Karen. Your bosses would remain the same. They're in control of what you do, don't say, whatever rules. This is something I think on the members at the table to help define what that scope, that plan is, that when you're ready to post, you're like, okay, it fits these, does everybody within your particular supervisor's roles fit? Okay, good, you're going off and you're posting it. So this isn't adding additional checks on your communication when the time comes. This is setting some rules at a high level, what I think we all would like to see or not see. So I think a plan is absolutely spot on, and I don't think we're quite there yet. Like, I haven't heard anything other than, hey, we want a singular message, that kind of thing. But I feel like this is something we're going to talk about offline. It's probably next collaboration meeting. This will probably be something that we really get into the details on. All right.
So, one thing that, at the township, when we have a department head meeting, Karen kind of goes around and gets a summary because she puts that information out to the employees. And so it's some key things so that we're all on the same page. And I think what I'm hearing is at least we want a common message. And, what happened at this meeting tonight? Okay, what was it? And then we're all cascading that out the same information. And I think if I'm hearing you right.
Did that answer your question, or at least? Sure. Yep, I think you hit it. The communication plan is really what we need to iron out. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it kind of goes to the folks here that I'll just use that as an example. So Robert says, hey, this is what we're gonna say, and I go to Karen, I'm like, we're not gonna say that. We're gonna turn it this way. That's the part that this addresses, that we're not gonna engage in that kind of piece. I guess what I'm trying to say, it's not a, hey, you guys have to write things exactly the same way, and we all have to approve it. I think it would totally mess with your job, make it awful, and I think would make us slow to be able to get messages out quickly. So it's more of we all commit to an agreement. I don't know how to say it, but we're going to communicate in a way that not undermine each other.
I'll add a little bit to that. So you four have a unique ability. You speak to the public. You can be weaponized, and used improperly, one of these entities could leverage your voice to oversee or get public pressure on one of the other ones. I don't think any of us want that to happen. We want to make sure we've got a sort of agreed upon high-level plan to make sure you can stay within the rules of your supervisors, individual supervisors here spreading that message, but at the same time, there's that check, again, from these members up here, that you're not going to be in a position to be weaponized. Correct. That sounds fantastic to me. But I think that sounds amazing. And if I may, Jeff, Shelby, please remind me your communication director's name. I know that she's part-time, but still, she's important to this.
Sharon Melendez.
Thank you. Include Sharon as a part of that. Yeah. I feel like we've hit this one. Are we good? Carry on. We'll kind of come up with some details, some high level. I assume probably our next collaboration meeting or collaboration group meeting will be where we discuss that.
And I think too, when these guys share, they learn from each other. Because they're coming from different parts. School from the township and the library are
Very
open
different.
spaces.
Yes.
And they're going to learn from each other when they do that. And another thing I wanted to say, I've lived here all my life, as most of you know. And it's unbelievable what all has happened. This committee and that committee used to be volunteer fire department. Now we're for real. And I'm one of those that I'm Plainfield, but I'm Avon. You walk across my road, and I'm in Plainfield. You see Plainfield buses go, and you see Avon buses go. I don't like it. I can't get anything Avon. My big gripe is the Avon icon. I drive to Danville to get it, or I take one from the superintendent's office, because I get Plainfield, and I could care less. Plus the fire department, they're good to me, but it's Plainfield. Everything is Plainfield. But I think these guys working together would be great. And when I go to these places, becoming president of board, I see you guys all the time together, where it's different activities. And I know that when we see each other like that, we can all work together. And that's what I want to see happen. But it's cool that we see each other at different activities. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Cindy. I'm gonna end that one and move on. Actually, that's the end of the agenda item, but there was some sort of notes that I've taken from my town manager. Actually, even shared this from Don. So I want to share this with everyone. So we created a few of these subcommittees, and Shane and I are guilty. So this isn't definitely not calling the kettle black here. Please make sure whenever these subcommittees meet, that you're including staff in that. And I would implore, so from town council side, I would implore it's Ryan. Like, I think he's the most prudent person to be there for us. And I think for the township, that's Don. If there is a concern, because Don actually is an elected official, if there's a concern about that, then I think Brent is the next right person for that. But ultimately, what I'm trying to get here is library board, school board. I'm getting ready to invite you to one of these subcommittees. When you do come, make sure Laurel's there, make sure Scott's there, or a representative. Make sure staff is included in that, because Ryan could have got us out of some dead ends, if you will, just by being there. These guys are way smarter than us on what they do, so having them at the table is only going to make us better, stronger at being successful at getting down the road. So that being said, please make sure staff is involved on these subcommittees in the future. And again, Shane and I failed. We didn't have either one of them there, so we will remedy that for the next time. And then the last one, both school board and library board, I feel it's prudent, apt, what not to have a member of your board be on our leadership subcommittee. So far, I feel like the generic rule that we had was the leaderships of those of the individual boards. So for the school board, your president or vice president, it was sort of that way for the township, for the town. I think it's sort of boiled down to now it's just those presidents, because last time it was Shane and I. So you are officially invited, or at least share with Steve. He's officially invited, or his representative, his replacement, and we'll work with, and of course Cindy. And we'll work with you all on the next meeting for that, and yeah. And then the last one is, how do we want to plan or go about scheduling this meeting, this joint work sessions? In the past, we asked Jared to send out a doodle to everybody, and in fact, I think this was the first one you guys were involved on that. If you're okay with that, I'll ask Jared again. We'll have us send out a doodle for roughly 3 months from now. Get a few dates on there to find out when we can have the most attendance. If not, I'll hear another suggestion if someone has a better idea or competing idea. I'm seeing lots of awesome ideas. You okay with that? July? Is that my May, June, July? Endish of July? Yeah. Is that okay? Give me. Would pushing it back to August be better? Would pushing it forward be better? You think beginning of August? I think. Any complaints? Right now, not necessarily. In fact, that's going to be the goal of this doodle. Is just. In fact, I think the last one you saw, it was more or less the whole week. Pick a better date. Again, I like having it 3 months in advance. It really makes it easier for everybody to, I ain't got, unless you got a dentist appointment or something on one of those days, it should be a little easier. So, unless we have a new meeting space pop up between now and then, I feel like this is probably the largest. Really well done. Just want to highlight that again. Great space. Yeah, where are the refreshments? I mean, no kidding. He does. That is true. That is true.
Whoever chairs the meeting should bring cookies.
Well, we're not. Okay, yep, I vote for that one. Yeah, there's whoever chairs the meeting, whoever's a presiding member, I think is responsible for the cookies. I think that's what we kind of came up with. Okay. That being said, last one, throw it out to the table. Thank you very much for being here, but your input is valuable. What can we do better? What would you like to share? Seeing nothing, I'm gonna call the meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, public. Thank you.